Hello students, it's me Subham and I'm here to teach you democratic politics class 9th NCRT. So this is your book Social Science Democratic Politics 1 for class 9th and there's the contents. There are 5 chapters in your syllabus of democratic politics. Chapter first is what is democracy and why democracy. This is chapter first. And chapter second, constitutional design. And chapter third, electoral politics. Chapter 4, working of institutions. Chapter 5th, democratic rights. So let's start. So this is first chapter, what is democracy and why democracy. Chapter first. So there is a first topic, what is democracy, and in this topic we have subheading, why define democracy. So let's talk about definitions of democracy, why there is any need or not. So according to me, the main purpose of definition is to achieve clarity, common understanding of a word. Generally, it is a form of government when we talk about democracy. Somewhere democratic government and somewhere non-democratic government. And when we want define democracy, because we want the cause, the real reason, the purpose of democracy. So that's why the main purpose of definition is to achieve clarity. Okay? So there's a conversation between Lingdo madam and her students, and it is a very important to understand basic requirements of definition of democracy. And there's a student, Mary, raised a good question, that is, why do we need definition? And Lingdo madam replied very well. We need definition only when we come across a difficulty in the use of a word. Okay? So this is the basic understanding about definition, and the main thing, why define democracy. That's why we want a simple definition of democracy. So this is the simple definition of democracy. Democracy is a form of government. First thing, it is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. This is the simple definition in your chapter first. So you know about democracy. Okay, in this slide we talk about this cartoon, Democracy and Some Army Personnel. This cartoon is dedicated to Iraq when elections were held in Iraq with the presence of United States and other foreign powers. Democracy written in this way, and M is highlighted here to show military or power help to establish democracy. Okay. So further we talk about features of democracy, and for that we have to again explain the simple definition of democracy. Democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. This definition raises some basic questions like who are the rulers, what kind of election, who are the people, what kind of form of government. So for that we have some examples, like for first question, who are the rulers? There is an example, major decisions by elected leaders. So there is an example of Pakistan, General Pervez Musharraf. He removed forcibly a democratically elected government, okay, and proclaimed himself the chief executive of the country. Later he changed his designation to president. And here is a cartoon, and this cartoon is going to show the condition of Syria. Okay, so Syria is a small West Asian country, and there is a ruling party, Al-Baath party, and if you want to do anything like any political thing or anything in this country, you have to take in permission from that Al-Baath party. So there is a democracy, okay, and this is Syria, and this is the gate, and democracy wants to enter. So there's a person who want to say no entry before you fill that form and become a member in Al Baath party. And is that clear? He said that. So there's a basic question from cartoons. So when you are going to read cartoons, you have to be very carefully, because there are some questions like, what does the crown of leaves and democracy signify? So there is a democracy and crown of leaf. So the crown of leaves on democracy is used to represent a circle of leaves. Okay, circle of leaves that is placed off on someone's head as a victorious sign. This implies that the democratic country has won against some countries and is demanding justice, but not against all the nation. Okay, again, there is a cartoon, read that and understand its a meaning and relations. And I will definitely make a video on democratic cartoons. And this cartoon was drawn in the context of Latin America. I think it applies very well on the Pakistani situation. Let's talk about further President Pervez Musharraf. When he became president, he issued legal framework order, okay, in 2002, and that amendment the constitution of Pakistan. According to this order, the Pakistan can dismiss the national and provincial assemblies. That means president becomes supreme in the country, above the parliament. Okay, and further, the work of civilian cabinet is supervised by a national security council, which is dominated by military officers. So there is a drawback, because army officers are not elected by common people. So we can say clearly there are many reasons why Pakistan under General Musharraf should not be called a democracy. Okay, and this example gives us the first feature of democracy. In a democracy, the final decision making power must rest with those elected by the people. Okay. Second thing, free and fair electoral competition. So there is example of China and Mexico. We have to talk first China. In China, elections are regularly held after every 5 years for electing the country's parliament, called Quanguo Renmin Daibyo Dahui, National People's Congress. And the biggest party, the main party of China is Communist Party of China, CPC. Okay? The National People's Congress has the power to appoint the president of the country. Okay? And if any member want to contest election, they have to take an approval from the Chinese Communist Party. Okay, only those who are members of the Chinese Communist Party or 8 smaller parties allied to it were allowed to contest elections. The government is always formed by the Communist Party. Okay, and second example is Mexican example. Since its independence in 1930, Mexico holds elections after every 6 years to elect its president. The country has never been under a military or dictator's rule, but until 2000, every election was won by a single party, and it is PRI. The full form of PRI is a very important institutional revolutionary party, and there were opposition parties did contest elections but never managed to win. The PRI was known to use many dirty tricks, okay, to win election. So we can say second feature of democracy, holding elections of any kind, it is not sufficient. If you are conducting election, that is not sufficient. The elections must offer a real choice between political alternatives. Okay. So a democracy must be based on a free and fair election, where those currently in power have a fair chance to losing. So that is the second feature of democracy. Third, one person, one vote, one value. Okay. So in this segment, in this democratic feature, we can take example from Saudi Arabia. Earlier, Saudi Arabia, women did not have the right to vote until 2015. Okay, right now they have. And when we talk about Estonia, Estonia has made its citizenship rules in such a way that people belonging to Russian minority find it difficult to get the right to vote. Okay, in Fiji, you can say the electoral system is such that the vote of an indigenous Fiji has more value than that of an Indian Fijian. That means one person, one vote, one value is not applied in Fiji. So we can say, and democracy is based on a fundamental principle of political equality. Okay, so that gives us third features of democracy. In a democracy, each adult citizen, each adult, that means adult, okay, not about the children or child. In a democracy, each adult citizen must have one vote and each vote must have one value. That means if president is going to cast their vote and I am going to cast my vote, that is equal. Okay. Next, there is again cartoon about Saddam Hussein, and it's about Iraqi elections where at last one man one vote, when Saddam is shown behind the bars, and Saddam wants to say, I liked it better when I was the one man and the one vote. Okay, so he was like a dictator, and he was army chief. Rule of law and respect for rights. In this feature, rule of law and respect for rights, Zimbabwe, we are going to take example of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe attained independence from white minority rule in 1980. Since then, the country has been ruled by ZANU-PF. The full form of ZANU-PF is Zimbabwe African National Union Patriotic Front. I am going to repeat it. Zimbabwe African National Union Patriotic Front. The party that led the freedom struggle, its leader Robert Mugabe ruled the country since independence. Elections were held regularly and always won by Zimbabwe African National Union Political Front. And President Mugabe was a very popular and very famous, and he also used unfair practices in election. So you can say there were also some influence of the president, and his government always change the constitution and increase the powers of president, and reduce the accountability of the president, and opposition party were harassed, and their meeting disrupted. Public protest and demonstration against the government were declared illegal. So there was a law that limited the right to criticize the president. Wow. And television and radio were controlled by the government and gave only the ruling party's version. And government harassed those journalists who went against it. Okay. So the example of Zimbabwe shows that popular approval of the rulers is a necessary in democracy, but it is not sufficient. Popular governments can be undemocratic. Okay, maybe the president Robert Mugabe was a very famous, very popular, but popular means not democratic. Okay, there is a clearly written popular leaders can be autocratic. Okay, they can be become dictator. And next thing in this feature, there are some conditions that apply to the way a government is run after the election. A democratic government cannot do whatever it likes. Okay, if it is in majority, that means it is not necessary they have right to do anything. Simply because it has won an election, it has to respect some basic rules. In particular, it has to respect some guarantees to the minorities. Every major decision has to go through a series of consultations. Every office bearer has certain rights and responsibility assigned by the constitution and the law. Okay. So the aspect gives us the fourth and final feature of democracy. A democratic government rules within limits set by constitutional law and citizens' right. Okay, this is fourth feature of democracy. There is a summary of democracy, definition of democracy. Rulers selected by the people take all the major decisions. Election offer a choice and a fair opportunity to the people to change the current rulers. Okay, and this choice and opportunity is available to all the people on an equal basis. And last one, the exercise of this choice leads to a government limited by basic rules of the constitution and citizens' right. Okay. So this is the first lecture, what is democracy, why democracy, and thank you, and I am going to make second video